Good afternoon. Welcome back to the B&H event space. You're tuned into Bookmaking 101 books, like actual books. If you're here for the other bookmaking, it's not what we're doing today. I know now everything's legal and you get the sports betting and everything, but no. Bookmaking 101, the wonderful Jean Fruth joining us as always. And Jean, I'm going to let you introduce your wonderful guest.
Yeah, thank you. So this is Josh Baker. Josh is the art director for the two past books, the two recent books that I made, the last two. But that's not his claim to fame. Josh has been, I'll let him like tell his own resume, but Josh has been making books for a very long time and beautiful books for many years, working for Taschen. And Josh, I'll let you take over and talk about all the books that you've made and all the other things that you did before books.
Yeah, we need this is our first time having you on, Josh. So welcome.
Yeah,
Not to put
thanks
you
for
on the
having me.
spot or anything, but no, it's wonderful to have you. But yeah, we want to get the tea. What's the background?
Yeah, well, I found graphic design when I was younger through music, and as long as I was able to do that and make a little money, I did that. Around the time of Napster, it became more challenging to work doing graphic design for music, do a lot of things for music. So I transitioned to advertising, and that was my connection into to Toshin, my ad agency boss was friends with the Toshin editor, and he let me moonlight doing a book, and the rest is history. I spent 16 years there. I did about 160 some books and counting, from subjects as varied as World War II documentary stuff to music to sort of the Hollywood tent poles, Marilyn Monroe, Elvis, the Beatles, all these kind of books that people still want, photos that people still want, and it's been a wild ride. I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to have found Jean and been able to work with her on these two books, especially this important, exciting new one. So thanks
Gene,
for having me.
this is like when you go to like a softball game with your buddies and it's like, oh, we need an extra guy. Can you bring your friend? And your friend is like a retired major league. It's like you bring David Ortiz up to the playground and it's like, oh, hey, here's my friend David. Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. This is David Ortiz for sure. In bookmaking. No, I'm very, very lucky. I mean, the books that he did, and we actually met through Neil Leifer, and he's done a few books for Neil, incredible books, like those beautiful. I mean, if those who know photography books, Taschen's books, these the books that I poured over, you saved up and purchased because some of them were just, wildly expensive, these big, beautiful, just books. And Neil's books are, just they're just really special. And I learned about making a book, with Josh. The first book that I made, it wasn't like, oh, I'm going to go out and make a book. It was I had these photographs and we put it together, and I wasn't really as involved in the process, or I was involved, but of course, but not learning like I learned from Josh. And then everything changed when I was doing the second book because I really had such a good like teacher who gave me an understanding not only of what it takes to make a book, but I was shooting for those books. Like, so it was a purposeful, it wasn't, oh, I have these photos already. It was, I want to go out and make a book and shoot for a book. So I was with Josh, especially this last one, early in the process, in the very beginning, as I was finishing up book number two, we were sitting together and printing in Italy for our second book. I'll have you know, our third book we printed in New Jersey, very close to you.
nice.
And the pizza is pretty good there too. So I do recommend printing in
Top
New Jersey.
tier.
Yeah. Um, but it was I was out making a book, shooting purposefully. What do I need to make this book successful? What do I need to make a beautiful book? So Josh was not only involved in the end process of putting it together as the art director, he was art directing before the pictures were even made, and we were having conversations of what was needed, what would be good. I would send him my takes edited down and send him, oh, I don't know, 100 photos, 500 photos, 1,000 photos. And then he'd say, what's missing is this, is that, you need more of this, you need some portraits in there. And these things that he was saying to me to round it out and to make it interesting.
I gotta ask, because normally it's like, you start, it's like, okay, let's start at the beginning, let's go in chronological order. But you touched on some things there, Gene, and one thing that jumped out is again, you're working with someone who knows their craft, the same way that you know your craft. Going into this, Josh, what is, or in your history of and your career of working with photographers, what is the one thing that you find that is like the lapse in understanding between the bookmaking side and photographers? Is there one thing that's like photographers always come in thinking this and then they get blindsided by this?
I mean, one thing, I don't know if there's one thing, there are a few things that have kind of commonly recurred for me. And, working with Gene after having gone through doing books on sport, working with Neil Leifer earlier in my career was a learning experience because the focus of a working photographer who's a commercial photographer is kind of like, I got the face, I got the guy, I got the play. And if you look through a sort of chronological record of it's the same play, different famous people, same play. So for a photo book, that doesn't really work because it's all at once as opposed to over the course of years. So, when Gene asked my opinion, working with a photographer who's still active and producing new things is a little new for me. Tashin didn't really go in for like modern stuff as much as other publishers do. So having the opportunity to sort of be like, if you want to round this out, try these other things and, like see what you can do, from angles that you haven't shot before, because that's not what the commercial photography wants. You have the opportunity to kind of do whatever you like. And so that's one really common thing for me in across making books. And the other one is sort of how many pictures you need, or sort of the diversity of material or work that you need. And the it's sort of either you're drinking from a fire hose where somebody will give you 10,000 images to edit down, or they're so tightly edited that it's really challenging to make a book because of the sort of the first story that I told, which is like there's so much similarity in many of the photos. And working with Jean, even on the first book that I worked with her on, which was her second book, there was so much material, but it was already well edited. And Jean, that's the other thing. Jean knows what she wants. And even if she had never, felt educated about making a book, it was really easy to jump right in and work with her of because of that sort of focus that she has and what she wants, the stories that she wants to tell. That's the other one that's sometimes takes some learning is the mechanical process, cropping the images. Many commercial photographers are used to having their images kind of done everything to, but earning the trust of doing that for someone else is challenging sometimes. And there are things about working in print and on the sort of fixed page that might not be totally a photographer might not be fluent in as compared to looking at something on screen or one at a time. So if that and I could go on and on about things that I've learned how to work with photographers, but those are the main ones that you want to kind of, as a designer, try and tap into as soon as possible so the process can go well.
Now, Gene, I got to flip it back on you because, like Josh said, I mean, you're a woman who knows what she wants. It's you're going in there with the direction. It's not just like, oh, hey, Josh, here's 10,000 images. I don't know what I'm doing here. Can you just do the work for me? How is it relinquishing that control? How long does it take to build that trust?
Yeah, it's definitely a learning process. Well, first you have to understand, and for me it was when, okay, we're making a book. The first thing you learn is making a book, you don't just take your images and put them on pages. Like it's so much more than that. And really that's where I started was, oh, I'm making a book. I take these photos and they go and and then there's a book. And that's so far from each page needs to be something special. It needs to be a surprise. It needs to entertain. And you have to keep the viewer interested or they're going to close the book, right? So it's entertainment and how that's put together and how it's shot and what needs to be in there. And the hardest thing working with anybody, but and Josh included, is the photos have to be edited down. I hand him 2,000 photos. Well, we have 256 pages. So most of the photos are going away. And it's that's my edited number that I handed him, right? There's thousands and thousands of photos. So I'm editing down and say, okay, these are the ones that I want in the book. Well, they're not going to all go in the book. So then which ones go in, which ones stay out? And he is also helping me tell the story. So each chapter in this book needs to tell a story. And we've got written words in the book because there's so much going into it, right? You're not just putting what is the story that you're trying to tell? What is the message that you're conveying in this art? And so we have written words. We have in the latest book, it's a book about women in baseball. So we have women historically who played in the AAGPBL, and we have great stories there. We have opening chapters of people who champion women, like Billie Jean King is in the book, and she talks about why it's important, why gender equality, advocating for women in her story. And they're all personal stories written by each one of them. And so all of that has to go into the book with the photos and laid out to make something beautiful that people are going to want to take an extra minute. I mean, it's a world not of photo books anymore. It's a world of instant, right? Instagram and Facebook and TikTok and what's the other one that disappears that. So all of those things, people look and then poof, they're gone, right? It's instant, whatever. A book, you have a chance to have another moment and you want them to look at it and maybe spend an extra minute before they turn the page, just have an extra look. And so you're trying to keep the viewer interested. And there's so much that goes into that. And Josh was a very big part of that. A good art director is a very big part of what makes a book successful.
Josh, is there a lot of checking egos on both sides? I mean, I know we photographers, we have personal attachments to certain images. And sometimes it's an image that an art director is going to say, why are you attached to this? This has no place here. Or, yeah, cool image, but it doesn't really fit the story we're trying to tell. How do these sort of situations get ironed out?
At the end of the day, I'm facilitating someone else's creative vision or whatever. And if I have an opinion, I'm certainly going to state my opinion, and I feel like that's part of what the job of an art director is to have an opinion and to sort of bring the experience that I have to help tell the story. There are layers of telling the story, like Jean was saying. There's the sort of sequence, there's the sort of overarching shots, which you could use movies or music as a metaphor for this kind of thing. Like what's your lead single, when the chapter starts, what's the establishing shot? All of these kind of ideas transition well to how a book is made. And in a weird way, so does the idea of a soundtrack or an album, because you want that through line that's maybe not noticeable to the person who's looking at the book. And so when there's certain things that stick out, well, even if it might not be my favorite picture, I'm going to do my best to make it work in whatever way that I can. And for me, design is an iterative process. So you start wide, you edit down, then you edit again, and you edit again. And if there are new ones that need to come in, they come in, and you work until everyone is as happy as they could get based on the limitations of page count. I mean, we can't make a 1,000,000-page photo book, and no one would want to look at it anyway. So the editing can be painful. And I always joke that my favorite image is gets cut from every book that I've worked on, and which is more or less true, honestly. But there are some cases where the image that you might not love serves a purpose that really helps the story, or it's just such an important subject that you keep it in despite the fact that it's not your favorite image or the best image. There are many reasons to include an image in a book. That's the difference between commercial photography for these instant moments, like the day after the game, than in a story that wants to live kind of forever. So you have to, there are compromises to be made. And it never really feels like a compromise for me. There's, 170 or so images in this last book, and not all of them can be your favorite, but I don't know that I necessarily hate any of them. But it's these kind of things do stick with people, though. If you ask Neil, he'll probably still remember the photo that we argued about the most in our book that was done in 2006, and still mad at me that I wouldn't let it go in the book. So,
Gene, any of those hanging on for you? Is there any images that it's like,
No, I think I've been saved more than once by good editing, so I appreciate it now. I think I'm easier to work with, really. I say I think I'm a piece of cake to work because I do appreciate, and I know like when I open the book or I hand you the book, that there's not an image in there that I'm not proud of. The absolute worst is there's something in there that makes you cringe or go, oh my
hmm,
gosh, like why is that there? Why did I let that happen? Why did I do that? So really better editing is going to, the best editing is going to make the book better. And the real interesting thing about art directing in a book and design of a book, and when I say design, I think a great design is no design. Like you don't see a design, and that's why I love working with Josh because he's not designing. There are books that have lots of bells and whistles and flip outs and colors and I don't know, all kinds of things, right? Lots of whatever they are on the pages. We don't have any of that, right? Like the book is designed where it's you don't know, you just know that you like what you're looking at, and that's like no design. It's kind of like women in makeup, right? The best makeup no makeup at all. Now I'm losing everybody. So let me get out of that right away. Um, yeah, I said that.
I forgot my
But
touch up today.
yes. Um, so for the design, the cool thing is like when Josh starts to do these PDFs, he's designing a PDF, and we try to sit side by side when we can, or he sends it to me. But it's really nice if you can work side by side. But it's so great to be able to work like this by Zoom and all kinds of options. So there's great ways to work now. You can work with your art director. Actually, Josh lived in multiple places while we worked together. He was moving around, so in different states. So that's another story. But so but when you look at the PDF and you see your photo in this different way that you haven't seen it before, your photo becomes better. And it's the coolest thing ever when you get a PDF and like now it's a full bleed. Or Josh makes double trucks out of, I didn't have any double trucks in my first book. I started working with Josh and he takes a photo that I have that maybe is an ordinary photo and he made ordinary extraordinary by putting it across two pages and cutting the top and the bottom. And the double trucks in this book, I love them so much. And they're not my idea. They're all Josh's double trucks. One I had something to do with. All the rest are his. Um, but the double trucks are like, oh wow, when you open it up and you see the photo going across two pages, and now with the cameras that we have, when Josh has to make double trucks from old photos like of Neil's back in the day, you've got to up-res them, you got to try to do things to them. Now the cameras are making these gigantic files. You can make a big double truck and it still works, right? For the book. But the design of it, so then he'll take a little detail picture. And then Josh is always reminding me, make sure you shoot for the details, make sure you get some portraits. And you'll even see in the chapter that we sent to you, like you'll see the difference, everything that goes into the design makes it special. And everything matters, as Josh likes to say, everything is important. So the design of the scale, what he has across from what photo, this photo is across from this photo, the scale, the color, the flow, the story. There's so many things that he's putting into it before he's sending me that first PDF. And it's can really be magical when it really comes together and it flows. And it's a very exciting process. to see that happen and turn the page, and you're looking at your own photos, but you're excited.
And for our viewers, we are going to be getting the sneak peek. So pump the brakes. We're going to get there. But no, I want to stick on that design thing because I think that's pretty much, I mean, in my opinion, as a viewer, 90% of, the pictures are going to be great. Okay. That's like, obviously you want great pictures, but if they're not displayed in the proper manner, it's like anything else. It's like looking at pictures on Instagram. Okay, why would I want to look at a picture this big when it would look great on a wall size print? And presentation is really such an important thing. Now, getting to that design, is that something? I mean, Josh, when does the process start? Is it before? I mean, Gene, you were saying before, it's like Josh already had the ideas before I even began shooting the book. And are you kind of just coming up with ideas in your head, and then is there a sense of deductive design going in, like, okay, I look at certain images and I know this is going to be a double truck. I know that I have this image earmarked. It's going to be in there. It's going to be a double truck.
Yeah,
Okay, that one's done.
definitely. And I mean, and I feel like a photographer will have their favorites too. But yeah, the first thing that I'm doing when I'm looking through the book, not just a double truck, but also like the lead image for a chapter, or we call the front matter and all the stuff that makes a book table of contents, the title page, all of these things that sort of are the lead in where the credits come through sometimes, or if the credits don't come through, at least where you kind of are drawn in. That's your hit single, but it's also your quiet moments. And so yes, the first thing that I'm doing when I'm looking through a book is like sort of ticking off on my list ideas. And because this isn't my first rodeo, when I look at a book, or when I look at a photo edit, I'm kind of like, are there hero images already? Does the photographer have ones that they know that they love the most? And how are those going to work? Is the cover already squared away, or do we have to pick out a cover? And so, yeah. And the other thing too is uh, many people come with the idea that a photo book doesn't need structure, which is totally true. If you just have, 300 great photos and you want to just put them in, there's still juxtaposition, what goes next to what. There's still flow from, big to small, dark to light, all of these things, color if you're working in color. But the chance as an art director to collaborate on how the book flows, the structure, working with Jean, she had all these texts in mind. And we worked together to figure out how to put them together. And then when we had all the chapters laid out, we had them in an order, and Jean was like, we need to put them in a different order. With technology now, it's really easy to do that. So we just put it together the other way, we agreed, and it can change many times throughout the process, the editing process. But yeah, so I'm always like looking for what to steal and then realizing that maybe you can't steal this particular image from this chapter to use up front because it's too important to the chapter, and it's tragic because you want to have it in both places. We had little discussions about whether the images for the cover should be inside the book as well. And different people have different opinions about that because in a way you're wasting a page, but in another way, if the image is strong enough to be on the cover, shouldn't it be kind of in an anchoring position in the book? There's all these kind of conversations that you have, and it's all subjective. It's all about getting consensus and figuring out what makes everybody happy because there's no right answer. Two different people would make the same book very differently. And depending on where a photographer's at in their career and in their kind of in their mind, the decisions that you make years back might be different decisions now. I like to think that I'm pretty consistent, but certainly it's not 100% the case.
This is so cool. I just have to stop and say that because it's like it's not often that you get to peel back that layer and kind of look inside the mind of an art director. And this is always such a big topic with people is making a book and publishing. And it's kind of that plateau up here where people can't get there. A lot of people can't get there. And it's like, okay, self-publishing, yeah, go, publish, print, do your thing. But to really get a team involved and to exercise all of your creativity and have a team on board who's going to make everything completely shine, it's so cool. It's such a cool part of the process. How do you keep someone engage through a book? Is there, I mean, I know a lot of this is going to be subjective, right? There's no, secret manual that Josh is hiding under his couch right now that says this is how you make a book. But are there certain things, or is it depend on the subject matter and what kind of book you're doing? How do you keep somebody engaged from that introduction, from that forward to where they're always going to want to finish the book?
Turn the page, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
or
yeah,
even
Derek,
turn the
you,
page.
you
Yeah.
yeah, you hit on something earlier though that I wanted to kind of flip on the other side, which is that the best design isn't going to help photos or illustrations or something that somebody's not interested in, whether they're good or bad. If it's the subject, if it's the style of photography, whatever it is, design can really help, but it's not a miracle. And so keeping someone's interest, it really is a synergy between like working with the photos or the material that you have to present it in a way that's the best possible. And yeah, a flow where you want to keep turning the pages, where a little surprise, like Jean was saying, if you go from an action shot, and then you turn the page and you have a close-up portrait, something like this, where it will arrest somebody's attention. You want like these palette cleansers too, where there is a minute before between, like excitement, 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 ones that tell a story, and then one that's just quiet, a still life or a wide shot or whatever. So thinking about it in terms of pacing and in terms of, like I said, like cinematically or in terms of how you would sequence an album has helped me a lot through my career. Not just because that's the way that I came up, but also because it makes sense. And even though we have this sort of fixed art form, the fact that you're interacting with it, you can turn the pages, and sure, you can flip around and do whatever you want with a book, same as you can fast forward into a movie. But if you're opening yourself to the storytelling that we are providing, well, ideally, we're giving these cues to where you can take a break, dive in now and read this piece before we move on to the next chapter. That's like the exposition or whatever. The metaphors it could continue, and maybe it's a little bit of a stretch, but for me, it helps a lot to think about these things in these terms. And yeah, if you look at a section of the book and you say, oh, too quiet for too long, or too many medium shots, or whatever, that really helps inform how to put together the sequence. And what Jean was saying about how when you see the work for the first time, sort of in sequence, what I really love is to see the early version that's too long with a bunch of images that get cut, and then the final version, to see these little sections that were around from the beginning, that lasted all the way through. And it's more rare than you would think. It's an iterative process and it's a collaborative process. So not that much survives from the beginning to the end untouched. But when it does, that really feels satisfying. And it feels like, okay, I think I know what I'm doing at this point.
He does know what he's doing.
I mean, yeah, you can definitely tell, and obviously, I mean, both of you guys turn out great work. I mean, your books are great, and Josh, that's just a testament to you as well. It's that collaborative effort that I think I came into this really, you think that okay, we have an expert, we have someone who's really good at what they do. You take another person, another expert, somebody who's really good at what they do, and poof, book happens. I'm seeing so much chemistry and understanding, and it's almost like you're in a relationship of, a relationship of sorts with the person who's helping you co-create and taking your vision. They have to understand you as a person, you as an artist, what you're trying to get across. There's going to be arguments. I'm guessing there's always going to be some kind of disagreement or hey, I don't really see it that way, but here's my opinion. um, but working through all that, I mean, is it more, I guess, understanding somebody than anything else? Does that take precedence over, okay, I'm Josh, I've been doing this a long time, I know what I'm doing, or is it more of that, hey, we're gonna work together, I'm gonna, find out who you are as a person, find out what you're trying to say, I'm gonna impart my knowledge, I'm gonna impart my opinion, and we're gonna just kind of weave this thing out together.
I mean, you described the ideal situation, but I think ideally, I hope for the for the second one that you described, you know. And with Jean, that was easy because you know, we became friends through the process, and you know, I feel like I earned her trust, and I also f feel like I watched the confidence that she shows in creating the photos sort of come to bear on how the books work, which was a process over time. And so, you know, I take very seriously when she disagrees with me. And when I disagree, I usually try to present it in this, you know, in my experience, here's the reasons why we can do it this way, but I recommend, you know, keeping it in a small proportion or whatever it is. And, you know, I'm certainly not going to stand in the way of someone's vision who's the one whose name is on the book. That's just not what I'm here for. I think there are art directors that will. And I think there are art directors who are kind of like, listen, I know what I'm doing, and if you go any way but my way, you're making a huge mistake and it's going to be terrible. And I mean, I've done this enough times and I've seen enough ways that books come out. I also worked at a company where there were multiple people turning out books that also looked good that I didn't do. Yeah, so I feel like if there's an ego there, which everybody has an ego, it's certainly tempered by experience and also by understanding that, you know, even if I do feel like I'm good at my job, there are lots of people who make great books, just like there are lots of people who make great photographs, and two different people are going to make different ones. So, yeah, I try to make it a relationship that can last and where what you want is not to be sad when you look at the book when it's done and printed, but to be happy and be like, ah, like I'm so glad that I have this thing, this physical object that I can hold in my hands. And that doesn't happen on every book. So that's the goal for me, for sure.
Interesting. Gene, how much during the process are you hitting Josh up, bothering, sending him pictures? I mean, it's got to
Oh,
be
I
different.
bother Josh. But I do it in
Speed dial.
multiple ways. I
And so
call,
politely.
I email, I text, sometimes all three within an hour. And just and then we have time, we get closer to its printing time. And then I go into a little bit of like, anxiety mode as we're getting closer to that. And is it right? And there's, so much, but that's also nice about working with Josh is, he's been there, done that. So he's a nice calming factor when we're just figuring it all out. We had to figure out where to print the book. We printed at this place called DCC in New Jersey. And that made me nervous, right? It was the first time like we were printing, the other two books were printed in Italy, and it's like, oh, known for printing. And because Josh had this experience, we were able to work with this printer. And Josh knew, like, yeah, this is going to be good. And these guys are going to be great. And then it was so cool because we were on press with them, hanging out in New Jersey, eating great pizza, not like, I mean, it was good. It was good pizza. Like, so, but, and it goes to all the details matter. So if you're going to make a book and you're the photographer, you need to care about every single part of this process. So the great thing I have having this relationship with Josh is, he said it earlier, is trust. And when you can trust, which, it brings everything down because okay, he's got me. And so like where I don't know, he can make the decision and I know it's a good one because I trust. And that's a massive relief and it feels great because I do care about every single thing. I don't just let things happen from the plan to what I'm going to shoot to everything is very deliberate and I want to be touching all of it because we're making books, not for money, right? That would be the other booky thing you were talking about earlier. Do that if you want to try to make money. I wouldn't be good at that. But nobody makes books to make money. And you also don't, you can figure out a way, you make a book. So sure, sometimes if you're getting a nice Taschen deal, maybe you're getting a payment up front or a couple of payments. But nobody's getting rich or making money. The goal for making a book is not to lose money, right? So it's to figure out how to make the book and be okay because the book is for younger photographers is your calling card. it now takes you to another level. It's a cool thing. Later on, it's your legacy. Lifer is still making books. It's his legacy. And he cares about every single thing in that book, every single part of it, and how it's going to be printed, what's going to be on each page. And he's still shooting, to make it better. So you make books for those reasons, for art, for a calling card, for your career, different than a website. And then eventually, you're thinking about your legacy. And so to me, those are the reasons why you're making a book. And so you have to figure out a way. And yes, I'm lucky to be working with an art director, but as younger photographers, you can go figure that out yourself too. And you could start somewhere. I've seen photographers and there are a lot of options of self-publishing, figuring out there's lots of ways to get there. And then as you progress, you can try other things and do it a different way and, maybe gain a little bit of popularity where more of the books are selling and you figure those out. But those are the reasons, for making it. It's a wonderful process, like when it happens, and like Josh says, and the goal is you get it, and I can't believe I don't have it right here as I'm sitting here, which is ridiculous. But I could be holding one up, but yeah, I didn't think about that. I can go get it.
No show and
Um,
tell right now.
yeah, but yeah, no show and tell. Here it is. But now, like when the first one came to me and I was really nervous, I was actually out of town and I was calling Josh and texting him and emailing him going, "Did you get your copy? Did you look at it? Is it okay? Is everything great?" And he's like, "Where are you?" And like, "I'm sorry
Yeah.
for seeing it right now, but everything is fine. Why don't you go home and like go see it?" It's like, okay. And I opened the box and was like, "Phew, okay, good. There it is. So but it matters. It matters a lot. This is our work, and the colors and the printing, is it's very tricky. We're shooting these digital images in RGB, and then the printing process, Josh, the printing process has been the same for how many years? It's four colors, for God's
60
sake.
maybe, yeah, 60, 70 years. And it's a craft. It's not a science. And the people that you want to go to somebody who has their craft mastered because not every problem is solvable. And some things are compromises. And what you want to do is you work with somebody who's been around the block design-wise so that you can avoid as many pitfalls as you can. Then focus on being on press and being there to problem solve because it's not it's a lot more like carving something out of stone than it is like doing something in Photoshop on your computer. It's a surprisingly limiting process going to the printer and doing all of this stuff. So even if you have all your ducks in a row and everything is like really well done, you still run into these kind of head scratching situations where you're like, all right, how are we going to handle this? And sometimes you have to make a compromise that you don't necessarily want to make. But yeah, even with the most modern printers, the control that you have is only so much. And it's quite magical in one sense, but in another sense, if you're printing a red image next to a green grass image and they're running inline on the printer, well, the reality is that the compromise between those two images is something that nobody can change for you. It just is what it is. And if you had, you know, planned the design to that level of detail, which is extremely challenging and not really like an achievable thing for most cases. You just sit there and you deal with it and you say, all right, what are we going to do? How are we going to handle this? And there's time and money to consider, but there's also the limitations of the craft. And yeah, we were lucky at DCC to have a really sort of passionate crew of people with this super wizard of a printer who made it work for us very well, and it was pretty unstressful. But that's a pitch for not just a designer when you're working with a book, that it takes a village, but to work with professionals whenever you can. It might seem easy to proofread your own text, but if you get a professional proofreader, which isn't that expensive, you're going to get better proofreading. And you could say the same thing about pretty much like every step of the process. A lot of people retouch their own images and they think, oh, great, I don't need proofs. I got it how I want. Well, if you go to a pre-press person, get your CMYK conversions done by somebody professional, put the proofs and work with somebody on how to do them. all of these things can only improve the process. Of course, working with professionals isn't free, but it will relieve stress, it will improve quality, and it will, at the end of the day, bring things together in a sort of better, finely crafted product. So that's my pitch for not just people like me, but for everyone along the way that can help somebody who wants to make a book.
Josh, you just unknowingly gave the most wonderful pitch for hiring every single one of those people along the production line. Because I know me and probably a million other people out there right now are like, oh, I can't do everything. Or maybe I should do this. And maybe
I'm
I
pretty
do.
anti DIY, which is funny coming from the music scene where we would do everything ourselves. I worked at copy shop when I was in, college. And it's challenging to know enough about all the different aspects to avoid the pitfalls that somebody can help you avoid. So, can you make a book all by yourself? Absolutely. There are tons of people who do it. And some people put passion into it. Some people have lower standards. Uh, some people have a different approach to what it is. And like Jean was quoting me, I say everything matters. So the finest details that you can care about and notice, it's impossible to notice everything all by yourself unless you spend years and years and years on the project, like a labor of love. But whereas if you bring other people in, they're going to notice all of those things that might help you. And not just professionals, but also like share it with people that you're close to, get their opinions, see what people notice that you didn't notice. Because it's like anything that you're working on, eventually you become kind of blind to the flaws or to the differences because you've been looking at something for so long. So outside eyes can always help. And it's another part of why I don't necessarily have an ego about all of this stuff because I've been caught flat-footed too many times, and I don't take the blame for that. It's just impossible to keep in your head this vast project with all of these images at any given time. And so, yeah, if you're not careful, mistakes get made. Trust
See,
other people, you
Yeah,
know.
and getting other opinions is really true. It becomes a team and a team that's passionate, that everybody's together. I mean, and it's not only about the budget, you can do things in a way that keep your budget low and still create something like that. There's all kinds of ways to make that happen. But, like we'll bring it back to baseball, like I always love to do. I mean, there are baseball teams that, have the biggest budgets, but they don't have good chemistry in their clubhouse, right? They've got a lot of stars, but they're not getting along well and they're not putting out the best product. So, and then you can have a scrappy team that, doesn't have the same budget, but they've got passion and, and it makes a difference when you have a team and the egos are left at the door and everybody's working together. And like Josh says, we all have egos, but it's working together with those egos, with everybody having like-minded passion that makes a beautiful product at the end and a beautiful book and beautiful art piece. So yeah.
definitely. I got one final question before we do get a sneak peek at it. Because everybody always asks, and they come into the comments section, and whenever we do anything on making books or publishing, it's always like, well, how do I
You've
get
done this
in? How do I
before?
get involved? Not like this.
Oh, okay.
Not like this. No, this is I could sit here for 3 hours. I'm like, I'm over here like, you did well. You did well. Now I see why you're on your second book with Josh. I'm like, I could sit here. I'm like, I might just keep you guys on and just keep asking my own questions and picking brains. Um, I'm sure you guys get this all the time. How do I make a book? What's the first step? If someone wants to go the route of, hey, I think I have something great here. I have a great idea or whatever. I don't want to self-publish. Like if you can boil it down to direction, how does somebody go about um making a book? I mean, if it's one thing if I'm like, okay, I'm just going to print it on my printer. I'm going to go online and order it from a self-publishing site. If we're taking that out of the mix and somebody's like, hey, I have something here. I've never printed a book. What's the first step? I guess from each of your sides, is there one big first step that somebody should take?
I mean, for me, like, okay, making my first book. How am I going to go about this? I wanted to make presentations to publishers and do it in a more traditional way. So, how does one present, to a publisher? And it was something called BLADS. I don't even know what BLAD stands for, what even BLAD is actually, but I know it's called a
It's
BLAD.
it's a forgotten term. It comes from Germany, as a lot of publishing stuff originally does. But I don't think even modern German people in publishing know what it originally meant. But it means teaser, basically.
Oh, okay. So I made a blad without even knowing what the word blad was. And so I made a printed version for the first book. So it was like a proof of concept, like say for
Okay.
a film. So I made a trailer, but for a book. So it's, what is this book about? What is it going to be? Maybe who is the audience? Who's going to be interested in this book? Give us the details so you can make a presentation to publishers and see who might be interested in printing your book and who's interested in this subject. So I actually made printed copies for the first one. I never did that again, but for the first one, made printed copies and presented it to publishers to see who would be interested. And you could show one chapter of the book to give them an idea, or you could show a few, like, obviously you're putting your best photos in there because you want them to make your book. So, and maybe you have an essay in there to give them, but it's a flavor so they understand this is the book, this is how many pages I'm proposing, this is what. And that's what I did for my first book. And then I got back answers. Some of them, or a lot of them, was no, we're not interested. And then a few yeses. And then what publisher do I want to go with? That said yes to me. And the decision was based on, okay, yeah, we're going to make your book, but it'll be in 2 years. And the book will be this size and it'll be this many pages. It'll be printed like this. And you'll give us the images and we're going to make the book for you. And I was like, oh, and we'll give you this money. And it's like, oh, yeah, that's not for me. I want to be involved in the process. I want it to be made a little sooner than 2 or 3 years. Um, so I went with a publisher who was going to let me be involved in where the book got printed and how it got printed and how it got designed. I didn't get to make all the decisions, but I got quite a bit of it. And I had a lot of involvement in it. So that was more important to me than getting the money from the other printer. So it was making these presentations, getting some answers back, figuring out which one made sense for what my goals were for the book. And publishers, none of them have money anymore. It's all, I mean, maybe Taschen, of course, and Result, there's a few, but not many, and even them, they're, different than what it used to be. So you have to really have a look at publishers and see who's out there, who's willing to work with you. And then that same publisher did take the ride with us a second time. So it was really cool to have them go back, and the trust was there. So it was a lot less painful. They knew who I, was. I knew I was going to make a nice book. So they weren't, the first time they were really on top of me, even at the very last minute. They made a suggestion for a new cover, which caused a lot of anxiety. Um, but then they left me alone for the second book, which was great news. And then the third book, I decided to go the self-publishing route because for who that publisher was and what they were doing for promoting, because after you have the books, well, they have to go somewhere and they have to sell. And I didn't find that really they, just with who they are and the way publishing is today, that there was that much there that they were giving me. So I found another way to make that book, have it paid for by having one big client that pre-purchased a bunch of books. So that enabled me to get started in a different way, almost in a self-publishing way, and then have more control. But that also comes with figuring out distribution and everything else. But more so than ever before, you can figure out how to do all these things. And there's lots of options out there if you take the time to research and ask questions. And did I even answer the question, or did I go on a complete tangent?
No, that was great. You
Oh,
gave
okay.
you gave way more. That was like the extra credit answer. Now we get the flip side. Now we get the publisher and art director side.
Yeah, well, I mean, I work for one publisher, so the answers that I could give from direct knowledge are limited to that experience. But what I can say is that it's totally a spectrum, as Jean sort of touched on, that there's amount of money that you can make or copies that somebody thinks that they can sell. And as Jean also said, but publishers these days are looking, it's kind of like Hollywood. They want the tent poles. If you're going to get paid for a book, chances are you probably don't need the money anyways. The rest of the people have to figure out a different way to do it all. And in my experience, recently the biggest selling books, and it's very few, of course, are the Kickstarter books. You'll find these books on Kickstarter that sell 100,000 copies, and like not very many publishers are selling 100,000 copies of any illustrated art book uh, in modern times. So there's a total spectrum between like completely do it yourself, and yeah, you can print at one of these services. You could go the Ansel Adams route and do these, portfolio that is in the shape of a book of 20 prints, sell it for $10,000. You only need 10 copies to make the same amount of money that you're going to make for, I feel like there's every opportunity in every possible way to copy to produce uh your material that you want to get out there in the world, the story that you want to tell, or the sort of calling card, as Jean described it, that celebrates your own work and your own vision. I don't know that traditional publishing is necessarily the only route. Certainly, it's not the easiest route in modern times. And the thing about making a teaser or making a whole book, producing something physical, that can be a turn on or a turn off depending on what publisher that you want. Because I feel that if you have a publisher who wants to take a take a shot in the dark with somebody that's not well known yet, they may also want, like Gene was saying, they want to be able to make that person to sort of creatively control and edit the way that your work is presented to the world. And that's something that helps a publisher. That doesn't necessarily help you as an artist. So it's about whether you want creative control or more reach. There's also distribution only kind of publishers where they'll put you in their catalog. Um, they'll make you uh, give you access to all of their resources, the various expert people, printers, and so on and so forth. But they're not going to do any marketing, and they're not going to have any sort of input in your book, nor necessarily will they be paying you. But that's certainly another option. DAP may or may not still be taking on brand new people, but it depends on your budget and how you want to get things in. And the other part is like how you're going to get it to the people who want to buy it. I mentioned Kickstarter because bookstores aren't exactly doing any better than publishing in terms of making tons of money now. And there are lots of other ways. There are, fairs, there are individual events and signings, these traveling sort of book shows that happen. There are lots of ways to get your stuff out there that isn't, going to the local Barnes and Noble or whatever. And that's definitely like not the main pipeline for creative illustrative books in the modern times, in my opinion. So it's a challenging answer, it really is the truth. And if you don't have an in with any individual publisher, making something too polished and finished may be a turn off. Making something not polished and finished enough may be a turn off. And it's really just a crapshoot if you can't sort of get your foot in the door. But that shouldn't stop anyone from doing it the way they want to do it, because what you're looking for is a relationship anyways. And so if somebody is going to try and do it a way that you don't want, well, then it's great that they didn't pick your book up. You want somebody else, somebody that you can actually work with. So it's a tough thing. And if I had a nickel for every time somebody asked me how to get a Tasha book, I wouldn't have to work anymore. But the answer is uh, luck, timing, and if you know somebody, that helps too.
I love it. I love that you guys are just throwing it straight out there. And I think that's the only way to do it is not sugarcoat anything. It is. I mean, a lot of people, they have this fantasized version of what it is to make a book, what it is to be published. There's a lot of luck, hard work, grit, a lot of things go into it. And you guys, wow, a lot of good information here. I'm sitting here and it's like, it makes you really think is, everybody's like, all right, well, I want to do a book. Is it the best route? I guess that's a question that a lot of people really have to ask is like, is a book the best direction for whatever I'm formulating in my head for this this project or this idea. So I'm gonna pull up a taste of it there while I sit here and marinate. It's so hard for me to even conduct this because I'm like, you guys got me all in my head. I'm like, I seriously could drag this conversation on another hour and still wouldn't be long enough. All right. There we go. I'm leaving it up to you guys to we'll give a little preview, jump in where you see fit.
Yeah, it was fun to see. This is how Josh presents when he's sending me PDFs and we're sitting down side by side and we're creating everything, in his programs and looking at it. So this is the first way, we're looking at it. So the cover is always fun to, figure out like what your cover is going to be and looking at different options. This one was we looked at quite a few different options, didn't we, Josh, trying to figure it out. It wasn't obvious the cover for this one, like, and we had other choices. But I'm really glad that we landed where we did.
How much does design play into the cover? I know like if you're shooting an editorial and you might get, hey, this is how it's gonna be laid out. You know, you might have, if you're shooting an editorial job or a commercial job, you might have some foresight of like, okay, we're gonna, this is how many pages the spread's gonna be, and we're gonna need some verticals, or we're gonna need, there's gonna be a text overlay on this, on the cover image. Obviously, you're gonna need. How do you guys both handle that? Is that something, does that play in like, okay, this might be a great image, but with the text overlaid, it's not going to really fit? Are you looking for the right image for the cover that is kind of just the best of all worlds?
Absolutely. That's exactly what you're looking for. Yeah, because there were definitely images that we tried that we loved as the cover that the type just didn't play as nice with. And as a I want the message of this book is women in baseball and the inspiration that the pioneers are kind of trying to give to young girls and women that are coming up. I want the typography to be as bold as possible without fighting the image. But yeah, you work with what you have. And like I said, it's one of these craft situations that, you try different images mixed with type. And like if you looked at one of the early PDFs where we had multiple covers, the type is different sizes and it's all over the place on the page. And Jean's done 3 books and we kept the typography the same, first because it's great, but second because like she said, it kind of takes the design one layer away from prominence to let the images speak and the story speak. So in that sense, my job is to be flexible and try and make it work where the best image that we can have with the best looking typography that we can have is where it's at. And like there are other images where the typography was maybe able to be more bold, but it wasn't the main hero from Uganda driving the storyline. So there's that aspect as well.
Hmm. And I will say my unsolicited 2 cents here as a former baseball player and a coach who has to try to get 7 to 11-year-olds to try to throw on catcher's gear. The catcher is like that's the soldier of the team. That's the player who is quite literally in the dirt the entire game, having, balls thrown as hard as possible at them in all directions and breaking and spinning and dropping. And it really is a grueling position. There's a reason why, catchers careers, when you have a catcher that has a long career, it's so impressive because it is grueling on the body. So great image aside, it's such a good image, and the eyes, and I mean, Gene, you're no stranger to really capturing the essence of somebody in a portrait, but so like the eyes and the expression here just sell it. And the fact that it is a catcher, it's like for somebody who is a baseball player in the baseball world, it's like that is the person, that is the unsung hero. The big home run hitters get all the credit, the big Cy Young winning pitchers get all the credit, but the catchers that's like the infantry of the baseball team. They're the ones getting down and dirty and really the backbone of the team.
Yeah, catchers are always my favorite position and favorite player to shoot. So much so that I got to say to myself, okay, enough of shooting the catcher, move on because like this is going to be too slighted, but yes, I agree. And yeah, they're like the titans behind there, with their gear, or tools of ignorance, as they're called. So yeah, so I'm very happy it's a catcher, and Lillian from Uganda, see her, be her. That's the message, and so it all really works. And like Josh said, the story is super important to this book. Um, so yeah, it had to be Lillian at the end. So
I
that's
love it. We're gonna do yeah, we'll do a slow scroll here. Either one of you, stop me if I go too fast.
well, that first image is so fun too, because now you open the book, and this is a Josh thing. This is where actually we disagreed, and I'm so glad that I deferred to his knowledge, like really in the end, because it was what goes here. You opened the book, and I was like, bam, like hit you in the face with something big, and like and Josh was like, "Oh, no, 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 that's not what you want, And then we came up with this, and he made it that size. I'm like, "Oh, it's got to be bigger." What all photographers want, every image full bleed, right? Make it bigger, And he's like, "It's not right bigger. It should stay small. It should stay quiet. It's across from, a blank page, right? The end paper." The end paper is so the end paper just is what the end paper is. What does it feel like? What's the design of that or no design? And what color is it? And just all of those things, like with the book. And I'm so happy that and he was pretty strong about it too, saying it's got to stay like this. It's got to stay. And he had a quieter image that so we went back and forth, but I wanted big, loud, bold, and we can't we ended up with this. I'm so happy. Listen to
It
you
doesn't
all.
even feel like a compromise either. It feels like it ended up being the right thing.
It's so the right
we
thing.
What
needed
what
Not
is
everyone to be
I do want
comfortable.
to I want to dwell there and have you talk on that for a minute, Josh, because that is something that I did actually want to bring up, but it's like, we got off and running, and
Yeah, right.
it's always something where it's like, yeah, like Gene said, I think every photographer is like full bleed, everything full bleed.
Right.
No, so border size. And a lot of times you see in books, like you'll see an image that is, it's a landscape orientation, and it kind of just goes a little bit on to the next page. And formatting, like what is there just is it just a feel for how big the image should be, what kind of border, if there is a border?
I mean, it depends on part of it is the proportion of the book and the proportion of the photos, and part of it is if you're willing to crop or not crop. But the idea that you can have the negative space or the white space of the page be acting as an element. And this is page one is what they call the half title. And in traditional books, it just said the title really small. And as illustrated books kind of evolved and printing evolved, and you could put a picture and you could put color on any page if you want to. You still want, in my opinion, the sort of the expected stuff of a book. So this quiet first page, and it's not the quietest image, but at the same time, it has a kind of peacefulness to it, and the boldness of the figure is set off by the white space around it. Whereas if it was full bleed, it's almost like a full bleed has such a strong impact that you're not going to want to immediately sort of flow into the book. So for me, I do have strong opinions about what should go where in these sort of front and back places. The first page, the last page, beginnings of chapters. All these things are super important. Like if you go to the next page, the the picture facing the title is the oldest of the pictures. In the 1600s, the book still had an engraving next to call it the frontispiece. And so the frontispiece is better going to be your hit single, right? It's going to be one of the better photos in the book. And here we have the USA in the playoffs, and this is Kelsey, who is the only woman getting paid to play professional baseball today. So that seemed appropriate. Also, the colors play off the type, and there are many things that go involved in it, but you want it to have as many of those, tick as many of those boxes as you can, where it's like, okay, it's an important person that's at the heart of the book. It's an amazing photo. It matches the colors. The proportion is good. It's got movement. So if you look, she's moving into the page. She's leading you to want to turn to the next page. And so if you're the kind of person who reads, it'll lead you to read. If you're the kind of person who just wants to look at the pictures, you're moving on.
Gene, you always have an eye for like stuff always fits in perfect. It's like the lean of, I'm guessing that's the looks like maybe a shortstop. The lean is like the bodies fit together and there's like that space there. You just always I always look at your images and it's like there's always such attention to detail, foreground, background, where things are placed, the positions of the bodies, where the ball is. It's like you always have that eye for where everything should go. It's like stuff never happens for me. It's like you have like this gift where it's like these moments you just see them so well.
Oh, this is because the cameras shoot 30 frames per second.
Oh,
I
stop.
just picked the right one.
You're keyed in. You know something we don't know. Even this, like with the text, because that's another thing too, is it's one thing to have images and the little what's it called? I know there's a technical publishing term when you have the quote pulled out and isolated there.
Full
Like,
quote.
okay, pull quote. There you
I
go.
mean, if there was a more formal term for it than that, I don't know it.
That was a
We're just a
secret
bunch of
quiz, Josh.
craftspeople here.
I love pull quotes.
I love them too because it's like for people like me, it's like I'm looking at the pictures and a pull quote is kind of just like it tells me it's like, am I going to read this page? How quickly am I going to read it? How much am I going to marinate? What am I getting here? Is that the whole point of it? Is just to kind of draw you in, just like an image does?
That and also sort of layers of attention. Somebody who might not read the whole essay will maybe read a pull quote. And so you're talking about trying to appeal to more kinds of reader or viewer as well. And I feel like, there are photo book purists who will sort of, uh, you know, try and write off magazine elements or commercial elements included into the books, like cropping, like guttering images, like bleeding, like pull quotes and other texts. And I feel like we live in the real world. Like we want to have something that's the people that you're making the book for are going to approve. And so unless you're doing something on, I don't know, cricket, maybe you want to have the things that are going to make the book more accessible and appealing. And so, yeah, just like pictures need to have a variety and tell a story, you want the variety of text. They're the people who are going to just look at the headlines and flip. They're the people who might read the pull quotes. Sometimes you want a caption that tells a story of an individual image, and having those available to people will give them the chance to see the pictures through that other lens. So, in a way, we have a really varied uh, tapestry that we can offer people lead into. They're the kind of people who look at the book page by page. They're the people who read the text and then look at the pictures. And the kind of people who are just going to flip around and see what they see. And ideally, the book is appealing to all of those different kinds of people. It doesn't always work that way, but that's the goal. My favorite page.
Is this like I guess the relief or do you throw something in just to kind of, is it like a palate cleanser or?
No,
No, I don't know why it's blank.
I
Oh,
said that's me. I think it's an error. Sorry.
I'm like, wait, is this a palate
I
cleanser?
might have said, that's my fault. It's
That's the
No,
glass
I
of
get
water
fired. I
between.
get fired if there's two blank pages in a book like
yeah,
that.
there's I mean, it's definitely blank pages in books. I'm not a big fan of blank pages in books, but I understand it for sure. Yeah.
Lovely image right here. I'm not being biased because it's
Well,
CC,
yes, you
but
are.
maybe a little bit. That's a great moment right there. I mean, that's just like a nice raw, candid, emotional but fun yet lively moment.
And well, and this was in some ways a tricky book to make because we have women in baseball. So there's women on the field, off the field, past, present, future, around the globe. And it's how do you put them all in so it makes a book that makes sense and flows and you get it all in there. There was so much design like put into this with and thought put into it with Josh's expertise and knowledge. This was not easy. So, Claire Smith, who's, an incredible baseball writer for many years, covering the Yankees, and just the adversity she went through back in the day. And CC Sabathia is I know, one of her favorite Yankee players. I'm so happy when Claire hasn't seen the book yet, but I know she'll be happy when she sees that I used this photo of her with Cece because I photographed Claire over the years. And so, yeah, so it was fun. And then there she is with Rachel Robinson, which I know will be important to her too. So I'm really excited for Claire to have this in her hands at some point, but maybe she'll see it on B&H. So we'll see.
There we go. We'll
Yeah.
do a quick little preview here. I'll scroll through.
Yeah.
I know I've kept you guys. Me and my mouth always getting me in trouble running, running, running.
No, no, yeah, just flip through. So, like, yeah, so this is Porter Clara's essay. So this is all before really chapter one begins, is these opening introduction. Cal Ripken Jr. wrote a great introduction about his relationship with women in baseball and his sister. And then then the book begins. Oh, you know what that was? That was the table of content that was missing for some reason.
Ah,
Ah,
okay.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it was a
I
cool
wonder
table
why.
of content.
Hidden yards.
Yeah. Brilliant Double Truck by Josh. I didn't take
Right?
that
That is,
picture.
yeah,
I'm
that's
too young to
that's
have taken that. I'm very
it's
proud
to
that I
say,
didn't take that picture.
say, damn, Gene, you've been shooting for a minute.
Yeah, so the historical
Oh
part.
boy.
Here's one of those fun double trucks that Josh does so well. And, it was kind of an ordinary picture of them walking. And then I get the first round of, Josh's design. And it's like, whoa, that's really cool. So she takes ordinary and makes it extraordinary.
Do you get that double truck itch when you see certain images, Gene, that you shoot and you're like, oh, this has to be a double truck.
No, no, Neil Lifer is a double truck itch guy. He could see a double truck a mile away. Like he'll say, this is gonna be a great double truck as he's shooting it. It's incredible. Me, I'm like after, or sometimes I'm even surprised. Like Josh made this double truck, and it's like, oh wow. So he takes my image and makes a new image, and it's cool as hell.
Yeah. There's something
One thing I
about
will
them.
say, I have to go back to the gear. If you go back one, like if you notice, like as you're going through, like this, right, shot with a 12 to 24, like super wide lens, and then you keep going, yeah, 300, 70 to 200, a 400, 70 to 200, a 50, like so prime lens is prime lens, prime lens. It makes such a difference in the look in just this chapter. You don't know that. Maybe if you're a photographer, you know it. Like, okay, I could tell that was shot with a prime. But what you do know is this change of scale and this interesting thing. So when you're shooting for it, thinking about changing up your gear is super important for the look.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. The look of, because there is clearly a distinct look. You have inherently more of the frame is in focus when you're shooting wide, and you don't have that shallow depth of field like you do on the telephoto side. But does that does that play into the creative vision, or Josh,
Oh,
on your end? Is that something where are you like, hey, I need an image like this, or what's the parent? Because I mean, you have to be looking at stuff like that, right? The shallow depth of field versus the richer depth of field and how everything pairs.
Sure, absolutely. And everything matters. Everything depends on everything. The proportion is important. What goes next to what sort of subject matter wise. Like you talked about with Jean's photos, she has the geometry is very intricate and wonderful in those photos. And so anytime you can use those elements of the photos to add to the presentation, that the two pictures become bigger than the sum of their parts. That would be the goal. It's not always successful, obviously, but it's certainly something that we try and do as often as possible. Because two great images might not look great on the same page together, and proportion, one might start to fight with the other one, and so on and so forth. So it's very rare that we have a kind of like pure, even, balanced thing, and then you use that as an element, a design element, just like everything else. So, the more diversity and breadth when you're trying to tell a kind of overarching story, the better. Obviously that's not the only way to make a photo book because many people don't shoot that diverse of material. And you work with what you have and you figure out ways to make the flow and make the juxtapositions improve things, even if it's all portraits, or whatever it is. Something becomes important that lets you figure out the thread that you're trying to, bring through the whole thing. With Jean's photos, because there's, a wealth of great ones and diverse, it's easier and it's also harder because in a certain sense, you have so many good photos that were cutting great photos on the cutting room floor, and you're leaving other ones in simply because they're different, not necessarily because it's better or worse than the other one. So it's just different challenges depending on the book.
Stop taking so many damn good photos, Gene. You're making it hard on the art directors.
Yeah, they're worse
Uh,
problems to have, though, honestly.
wouldn't you'd rather have it that way, Josh, than someone
Oh
gives you
yeah.
too few, or it's kind of just like you're not there yet.
Yeah, I
So
mean, and I feel like I've worked on a lot of books, and when you talk about a book about a single subject or a single shoot or a single moment in time, to make the right length, the right number of different angles without it being repetitive, it's just a totally different challenge and quite a hard challenge, in fact. Much more difficult to, because there's the economics at stake. If you make a book that's only 90 pages, it's this thin little thing with no spine and nobody's going to want to buy it. And so either you can make it really big or you make thick paper. There's a lot of ways to do it, but I feel like the sweet spot is when there's enough pictures to tell the story that you want to tell without kind of having to pad anything out when you don't have any compromise photos in there, when you're cutting good photos, that's the sweet spot. I mean, it's sad to see them go, but it's better to do that than it is to keep pictures in just to make it the length that you want or the publisher wants.
wow. I I can't thank you guys enough. This has been honestly so not only interesting. I mean, I'm hanging on every word, but it's so informative. And it's not in like that, I don't like bullet points. I don't like talking points. This is just real experiential information that goes into what it takes to make a book from people who are out there actually doing it. So I can't thank you guys enough. I never would have thought that when we planned this, Gene, that I'd be going to an ALCS game at the stadium on the same day,
I'm surprised you even like kept this appointment. I thought I was going to get an email saying, sorry, but
mailing
Derek
it in.
Derek had to get to the game really early.
I went really
You're on your
early for
phone, you're on your
that's it.
phone out
I'm gonna
there.
be on Zoom. It's like, where are you? Why's your background blurred? In my living room. Now, no early arrival tonight. I went like 3 hours early for a Derek Jeter bobblehead, and it was insane. My dilemma, sorry everybody, I do this sometimes, but my dilemma today is what lens do I bring? Not only, is it like it's always the dilemma of like where are you sitting? You're stuck
Mm.
in your seat. But then I gotta look at an hour of your photos and then go and it's partly motivating and partly it's like, man, I can't look at these images. I can't come close to that. I'm just gonna bring my phone. So
Can you
you're motivating and
can you bring a
demotivating all in one
400
breath,
into
Gene.
Yankee Stadium? Can you get a 400 through security?
I got a 70 to 300 that I've been able to get in before.
Mm-hmm.
So, and
Yeah. But you're
oh,
right. Do you want to just watch the game and enjoy it?
I
Or do you
do.
want to start shooting?
I do. And what's going to be in the back of my mind the entire time is your grandstand photo from behind home plate. That
Oh man. Yeah, I get
one of
up
the
there.
all-time
Yeah,
greats.
I mean, bring a wide angle for that. That would be cool.
No,
What time is
you
the game?
own
Oh,
that shot.
the game's 7:30. Yeah, it's too late
Yeah.
anyway. Yeah.
You own that shot anyway. I already told everybody. I was showing a couple of my diehard Yankees friends and I'm like, this is the shot. Don't even try. It's already been done. You can't outdo it. It's got the little, the sunset. It's got the sun on the facade. Don't even
Well,
attempt.
you do need the Yankees to play late in October, which we're
We're
there.
getting there.
And then you need an afternoon game. So you need those things to happen. But they like their TV time with more views. So usually those games are night games. You don't get many afternoon baseball games. They want TV viewers. So
I'll take a win in lieu of it. I'll sacrifice the photo out for a win. Now, I can't thank you guys enough. Josh, this was one of our greatest introduction to somebody here on the event space. I gotta give you a standing
yeah,
ovation. I
yay,
mean,
gosh. Yeah,
honestly,
thank you. Yeah.
That was
Thanks
such
for
a
having me. It's been a lot of fun.
no, I'm glad you had fun. That was such a wealth of information. And Gene, we already know you come in and you bring the great images, you bring the lively nature and the great stories. So it was only right that you did, just like you do every other time here on the event space.
Get those Yankees to win, please.
I'm gonna will it. I'm gonna will it. We got Cole on the mound tonight, so let's
Yeah.
go Yankees.
Oh, you have Garrett Cole on the mound
Garrett
tonight.
Cole on the
Right.
mound. Ira was there the other day with some really great seats, and Ira got a win. So I'm gonna get Ira, if you're out there watching, listening, please send me that same good luck. I don't want to go out there and not even gonna
It's gonna
say
be
it, but
great. Oh, it's gonna be great. Oh, it's gonna be so fun. I'm so
looking
excited for
forward.
you.
Looking forward to it. I'll keep you posted on it. But Gene,
Well, I'll be paying
Josh,
attention.
you'll be hanging on. I'll keep you posted on what's going on in my photo world. It's like, did I take 3 photos and just get lost in the game? Hopefully
Yeah, I want
so.
to know.
There we go.
All right. Bye,
Josh, Gene,
guys.
thank you guys
Thanks.
again to all of our
Thanks a
viewers out
lot.
there. Thank you guys for tuning in. Another edition of the B&H Virtual Event Space now in the books. Catch y'all next time. Go Yankees.